Alright YouTube, since it's almost Halloween, it's time for Occult Video 105, Zombies and Zombie Lore. This is something that perhaps a more authentic tradition on the subject is fairly wildly out of sync with what it's become in modern discourse. When you think of zombies, you probably think of something like The Stand or Walking Dead or something like that. You think of people who have died or more or less died that now shamble around, kind of half rotting, usually mindless, incapable of any significant degree of thought, generally speaking. It might be the result of an epidemic or radiation or satanic magic or something like that. And now there's a horde of essentially pure evil denizens of corpse world wandering around trying to devour fresh flesh. In reality, zombie lore, in the more authentic tradition, takes multiple forms. I see an overlapping of the concept, really, of necromancy in modern zombie lore with the more authentic sort of hoodoo tradition. Essentially, it's pharmacological, or at least that's the explanation that tends to be favored today. The idea is you give scopolamine or datura itself or something like that to somebody, some sort of witch's brew, in sort of the Haitian path. Typically, it's an attempt to punish somebody who's done something wrong. This criminal, he's always drunk, he's raping women and stuff. Well, we'll soon take care of that. And so the local shaman, essentially, or witch doctor, or voodoo practitioner is consulted. The person is drugged, the person's put into a trance, becomes convinced that they're dead, becomes little more than a slave, may be repeatedly dosed on these substances. And they are the Walking Dead, in essence. They've lost, at least temporarily, their own ego. Now, there have been plenty of tales where somebody thus affected will literally work like a slave, shambling around, incapable of anything other than taking direction and suffering for some months or years. Eventually, at some point, they tend to snap out of it and flee. By then, the punishment has already been exhausted, more or less. Sometimes it's said that it happens to people who've done nothing wrong. They've just been enslaved by somebody else for some reason. That's the more authentic side, perhaps, of zombies. The idea of the Walking Dead sort of stuff, it takes the mindlessness and the shambling and so forth of the sort of voodoo tradition, and it overlaps it with the concept that the person is a corpse or is nearly dead or like being dead that you'd find from necromancy in the more European tradition. It's really an overlap of the two. If you look at European or Middle Eastern style necromantic rites over time, especially as we're talking about maybe antiquity in Greece and Rome and so forth, you're typically looking essentially at either the calling forth of a spirit, normally in a graveyard. You go to the tomb or the grave or whatever, you're calling forth the person's spirit. Or you're reanimating a corpse you're literally reviving somebody in a Lazarus-like manner, and they go on to be more or less normal. Or you're taking a corpse and you're using it in a sense that it's really more like a golem. That is, that in the golem tradition, that should be explained. In the golem tradition, a little clay or rock man is carved or crafted, sealed with certain seals. We'd think of the Golem of Prague, and they still claim that it's up in the attic of some synagogue there in Prague to this day, sort of locked away and non-animated at the moment, ready to jump forth at a moment's notice to defend the city or something along those lines. A little clay man that has been given magical seals, magical powers of some type or another through Kabbalah, usually in the Jewish tradition, and then goes forth like a slave. The only difference with necromancy in the more physical sense is that instead of carving a clay man, you've used a corpse. That is, if you've reanimated it, it looks like a human, it's in a human's rotten body, but it's not actually that person. It doesn't have a soul, it doesn't have a spirit, it's a golem, it's just enchanted to life in that sort of tradition. Some people would disagree. They think that the soul is present, or at least a spirit of some sort is present, using that body as a vessel, and it's become sort of a necromantic evil sorcerer's pet or something like that. That's not exactly the more authentic side of it. In the more authentic tradition of voodoo, though, it's pharmacological, or it's the result of a hex or a curse, which, let's face it, overlaps with the pharmacological. When we're looking at modern zombie lore, then, what we're seeing is not the authentic tradition so much as a Westerner's attempt to basically explain necromancy in a pharmacological manner. You would notice, in almost every situation where you watch a zombie movie or a series about zombies or anything you would roughly equate to zombies, what's the cause of the zombies? Is it dark magic or some Jewish sorcerer practicing golem arts in Kabbalah? No, it has nothing to do with that. It's a plague came along, you've got super rabies. I can't remember the movie that had I can't remember the name of it. It was actually really good. It's the one where basically all the world gets overrun. There's one part where Jerusalem, they built huge walls around it, and then somebody inside is like crying or something, and all the zombies start besieging the city. Or I can't remember the name of that movie. Tell me the name of it, because I want to watch it again, actually. It's pretty good. I probably should remember the name if it was that good, but it was years ago. You got Walking Dead and so forth. It's usually caused by a disease. Totally mundane, scientific explanation, or something along those lines, or radiation. If you go back to any given era, the cause of zombies changes over time in accordance with what the population is concerned about. So if you go back to like the atomic era zombie stuff, it's caused by radiation. It's caused by a nuclear war or government testing on disease specifically. In the new era, it's caused by an outbreak that generally doesn't have anything to do with a government. It's a space virus or something like that. It's something unforeseen that spooks people out. You go back further than that to like maybe a zombie flick from the early film period, and you're talking about some hoodoo witch doctor and some uncontacted tribe cursing the Westerners for cutting down his sacred tree or something like that. Because you've got that period of late exploration where people still were rather unfamiliar with, scientifically speaking, documenting the rights of some of these groups. There was a lot of anger festering at the time, and so naturally, it seemed natural, the idea that some primitive people would curse you, and then all of a sudden, they'd feed you poison, or they'd make you drink blood, or worship Kali Ma, or something like that, and you'd become a zombie, or something akin to it. I'd point out Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which pissed a lot of people off at the time, but is the best of the Indiana Jones movies, in my opinion. Disgusting stuff aside, it's no worse than what you see on Fear Factor reruns or something like that. That basically covers zombie lore in a pharmacological manner. The idea of being given some sort of substance that causes you to fall into a slave-like stupor, that's basically zombification. In a more authentic sense, too. I'm not sure that the Kali, the thuggy cult of India, regularly did this. I think they usually used a silk handkerchief to choke you to death, or stabbed you in the back after trying to get in with your caravan. They'd pretend to be a guide or something, and then they'd strangle you in the middle of the night and take your goods. And the British wiped them out through counterintelligence, basically. But I'm not sure they actually zombified people. Speaking only in terms of the herbs and so forth that would have been available in India at the time, yeah, they certainly could have been done. There's datura there. There are all sorts of weird species. There are all sorts of psychedelics. It's one of the most botanically rich parts of the world when you're talking about mind-altering substances. The climate in many parts of India would be perfect for both the more temperate side of things as well as the more tropical side in some of these locations. Yeah, you could definitely have done that. I'm not so sure that they actually did, though. I think it's limited to certain... You'd think of Iboga, for example. Within Africa, specifically, I believe the area around Gabon, they have a sort of shrub, and they take the roots. It's got ibogaine in it. And they give you the Iboga, and you fall into a trance for some 24 hours. And the healing process, they think that it helps you commune with their god Bwiti. And they use this for all sorts of healing. And the cat right now is sneezing. He's got asthma or something. He does this every day, so you're probably hearing him sneeze a little bit. Kitty, could you not do that? You can't have Iboga, and you know it. But what they do is they give you the Iboga. They think that you're communing with Bwiti. Now, in the more pharmacological methodology of explaining what's actually happening, what appears to happen, according to Western science, is you're starting an internal dialogue with your own subconscious when you take this substance. It's actually been shown to be extremely effective in addiction relief, to the point at which something like 9 out of 10 opiate addicts that take Iboga just one time, they never use opiates again. It's literally that powerful. It is healing, but in the zombification sense, typically healing's not exactly what you're trying to do. You're not trying to kill the person. You're trying to turn them into a slave. You're trying to take away their volition. And indeed, it does happen. You see even now in some of these areas, I believe it happens in Southeast Asia too, they've got these people that on the streets, usually tied in with crime or prostitution or something, they'll take certain powdered brugmansia especially, and they'll plug their own nose up and they'll walk up to you and they'll just blow it right in your face. You're out within, half a minute, and you're not going to regain consciousness for a good long time. You'll probably wander around hallucinating for some length of time. It's actually a very terrifying drug because of the way in which it can be delivered in that manner. Although people do take it recreationally, I certainly have never recommended that sort of delirium be used in that manner. I don't think you're going to enjoy the experience very much. Just take it from the people who have tried it. The most I ever tried was a modest dose of Datura, and that had its own massive side effects anyway. And that's really where zombies come from, is pharmacological effects. Really poisoning somebody, essentially. The modern zombie flicks are an overlap between that. It does have the biological aspect, whether it's chemical, biological, or whether it has something to do with radiation and some of the Cold Warfare that you'd get. And it overlaps that with European necromancy, essentially. And sometimes the golem tradition. A little bit, which in turn, as well, influences our understanding of necromancy. The idea of raising corpses from the dead is not quite as authentic as calling forth spirits, or a corpse being reanimated by demonic means, not necessarily by the hands of man. That's about all. Peace out.